For 6 days, Aron Ralston kept himself alive with fierce self-control and a conviction that only logical thought could let him survive. But the revelation when the 27-year-old climber realized how he could save his own life came from an explosion of blind rage. The year before his accident, Aron quit his job as an engineer with Intel to climb all Colorado's peaks over 14,000 feet. In May 2003, he began canyoneering in Utah, navigating the narrow passages with a mixture of free climbing, dare jumps, and climbing with ropes. At that fateful day, he was negotiating a 10-foot drop in a 3-foot wide canyon, listening to his favorite band when he moved a big rock he thought was stable. He goes from being out in the wilderness in a beautiful place and just being so happy and carefree to like, oh shit. He fell a few feet in slow motion, he looked up and the rock is coming, and he put his hands up and tried to push himself away, but the rock collides and crushed his right hand. He was trapped in the canyon, his right hand and lower arm was crushed by 400-kilogram rock. The next second, the pain hit. If you ever crushed your finger in a door accidentally, he says, this was 100 times worse. In an adrenaline rage, for 45 minutes he cursed like a pirate. Then he reached for his water bottle. As he drank, he had to force himself to stop. He realized this water is the only thing that's going to keep him alive. Most foolishly of all, he had not told anyone where he was going, so he knew he would not be found. He put the lid back on the water bottle and gathered himself. It was like, alright mate, brute force isn't going to do it. This is the stop think, preserve plan phase of rational problem solving. He has to think his way out of there. He ruled out the most drastic option, suicide. But the next most drastic alternative came to him immediately. He had this surreal conversation with himself. Aron, you're gonna have to cut your arm off. What the hell? I don't want to cut my arm off. Dude, you're gonna have to cut your arm off, he said to himself, that little back and forth, and then, wait a minute, stop. I'm not talking to myself, you're just crazy. You're not talking to yourself, Aron. Except he would continue to talk to himself in various ways to remind himself not to pass out. After 2 days spent fruitlessly chipping away at the rock with his knife and come up with a clever but useless system of pulleys with his climbing clips and ropes to lift the rock, he was defeated because climbing rope is stretchy and he couldn't obtain the required tension. He put his knife to his arm, only to find it was so blunt he could even cut his body hair. By the 5th day, Aron had found peace in the knowledge that he is going to die there. This is his grave. In the middle of his final night, hallucinating through hunger, lack of water, and cold environment, he had a vision of a small boy. He saw himself in this out-of-body experience, playing with him with a handless right arm. He saw himself lifting this little boy up, and there was this look in his eyes.
Daddy, can we play now?
That look tells him this is his unborn son. This is in the future. He will have this experience someday. And he was like, I'm going to get through this night. The next morning, finally, came the rage and the courage to do it. When his blunt knife pierced his skin but came to rest against solid bone, he thought there was no freaking chance he could perform the horrifying amputation that would save his life. He brushed some grit from his trapped thumb and a chip of flesh peeled off like the skin of boiled milk, and he was like, what the hell? He takes his knife and poking a bit more, and the knife just slips into the meat of his thumb like it's going into room temperature butter. His hand was almost jellified. The knife tip goes in and the gases from rotting escape, and there was this rancid smell. He goes into this rage, this hyper-emotional state after all this discipline to keep it together, and in this moment, when he was trying to rip his arm out from the rock, he felt it bend and it stops him. That's it. I can use the rock to break my bones. From then it was easy. The snap of his bones like puff was a horrifying sound, but to him it was delighted. The detachment had already happened in his mind. He was like, it's rubbish. It's going to kill you. Get rid of it, Aron. It's no longer your arm. As he picked up the knife, he was very cool and collected. It took him an hour to cut through his flesh and release the arm. There in the canyon, he calculated it would take him at least 10 hours to find medical help and he would most probably bleed to death. But using pieces of climbing kit, he strapped himself up and somehow managed to scale a 60-foot cliff to escape the canyon. Exposed to the fierce sun, he was found by 3 Dutch tourists who gave him water and helped him to hold on before he was picked up by a search and rescue helicopter dispatched by his family to look for him. He did this all on his own, and God doesn't exist, because if he did, he would help him out, that fucker. The vision that Aron had during his final night in the canyon has some truth. More than a decade later, Aron's wife, Jessica, gave birth to his baby boy, Leo. Aron still likes solitude, but when he goes out rafting or climbing, now he almost always takes his friends with him. Take care and join me on the next True Case. Bye bye.